There is no such thing as balance, by the way. People are like, I want to have this balance. Balance means you make no progress.
Yeah, I just think it's like you got to stop. You say,
fuck balance. Be great. Do you understand? If you're in a fat loss phase, be dedicated to the fat loss phase, because the reason you went to the fucking fat loss phase in the beginning was because you wanted a specific outcome.
But you won't regret it. You won't regret it.
Have a great outcome and have balance. It does not fucking work. Fuck balance.
I'm Kitty Bloomfield, co-founder of New Strength and Saturée, creator of pro-metabolic food supplements and seriously saturated skincare. And today I'm joined by my co-founder and co-host, Craig McDonald. Welcome back. Welcome back, Craig.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure as always.
It's a pleasure, yes.
Love our Tuesday afternoon podcasting.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
I've been a bit sick actually. I'm finally over it. Thank fuck.
Yeah, you don't sound like a tractor anymore. It's nice.
I thought you said I had a sexy sick voice.
Just to make you feel better, babe.
Oh God, it really, when you're unwell, makes you grateful for being well.
Yes.
Doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's
Didn't
so
train
funny
for 10 days.
when you're not sick, you're thinking about all these things and this could be better, or I could be doing this, or all these other things. But then when you're sick, the only thing you think about is being well and getting better.
I know.
It's crazy how everything shifts.
But I sort of did it to myself because I've been sort of talking about on the podcast. Got a tiny little bit of cough left, but not really. That I've just been socialising too much and just burning the candle at both ends. I think a bit too much, and and then I got sick. And I had been probably for about 12 weeks. Bit shit with my tracking, not tracking my steps.
Yeah.
I was training but not making any progress, just maintaining my numbers. We were also really busy as well. Like one of our coaches was away, so I was doing more calls. So it was just a combination of everything. Mm-hmm. Probably mostly that I was, burning the candle at both ends. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting, because a lot of women will ask me, Kitty, do you still have to train at the intensity you do and try and continue to lift heavier weights, forever? And it was just interesting over this 12-week period, and it just goes to show if you can put the work in and build the foundation, the maintenance is easy. So my body stayed the same. My weights, now that we're doing this, I've started tracking my weight again, but I jumped on the scale, 67.5 kilos. I looked the same. I just felt shit.
Yeah.
I just wanted to stop doing it because I
would say you probably looked a bit softer.
Oh, yeah. But, I haven't gained any weight. I haven't really gained any body fat.
A little bit. Well,
probably lost a bit of muscle.
A little bit of muscle, a little bit of fat gain. But
but not really. Considering for 12 weeks, and I was very inconsistent with tracking my food, walked but didn't track my steps, and I trained, but I just trained. I didn't try and beat my numbers. Sometimes I pulled it back because I was tired or I was sick, but I stayed relatively the same. Yeah. So I think, what it takes to build it and get to that place where you're happy, it takes a lot less. Maintenance is a lot easier.
Well, even when you're not going into a session that you're tracking and really actively trying to beat your numbers, there's just a standard of weights that you will lift. Even if you're just like, I'm just going to have a bit of a whatever session, you're still going to warm up and you're still going to put weights on and do them. That's still challenging. It mightn't be, those numbers might reflect what you were doing when you were really serious about your training, maybe a month or two prior, but you're still, it's not like you're going to go on there and on a hack squat, just do the hack squat with no weight on it.
Oh, of course.
But I guess you're still going to work up to
the point I'm trying to make to women who are listening to this is that, yes, you need to be more disciplined to get there. You have to be. You have to dial it in. You have to be more consistent with your nutrition. But the great thing of it is once you get there, if there's periods, I wouldn't have continued on with that because even though I didn't look that much difference, I just felt shit. Yes. I was still feeling tired all the time, and having shit training sessions, and even though I was having fun socialising, it was just too much the other way. Yeah. But it just shows that if you can build that foundation, build that muscle, then the maintenance part is relatively easy. I mean, I ate out heaps. We did heaps of eating out, drank more alcohol than I usually would. Yep. But again, it's not a matter of I stopped because I gained weight or gained body fat. It was I stopped because I didn't want to feel like this anymore. Yeah. I didn't want to feel tired anymore. I'd feel shit. Yeah. So I guess today's podcast, we're splitting it into two parts, is talking about the road to the photo shoot. So Craig has always wanted to do a photo shoot. He just wants to get some
not
sexy
really, to be
gruds on
honest.
and, you know, flex his muscles.
No,
Yes, you do.
No,
It's okay to say that you want to do a photo shoot.
Well, I do now because obviously
You've always wanted to do something. You wanted to either compete or do a photo shoot. And I'm like, don't compete.
Yeah, well, I've never really had any desire to compete because I never.
You have. You've talked about it.
Are you fucking right?
Yeah. Look, just be honest.
Just shut the fuck up for a moment, would you? No, I did. I went through stages where I was like, oh, you know, maybe I will, or maybe I won't. And then, you know, like having some friends who kind of competed and sort of, you know, been there when they were going through their prep. And then I was like, oh, you know, this would actually be really cool to probably do. And then we get busy in our business and whatever. And every time I do, I've just realized I'm really not that excited about going through competition prep. My hat's off to people who do go through that.
Oh, they're amazing.
You know, it's
just
awesome.
starving yourself. It's so like, oh
yeah,
my God.
Yeah, and the depleting and all that sort of stuff. You know, like I totally, but it's just, I've never had a real burning desire to do it. So, you know, I've just never got it. It's just not something that excites me all that much. But
you just want to wear the sexy DTs, don't you? Don't lie.
Well, hey now.
He wears these when he does his
I
check-in
probably
photos. He wears these cute little tight
The Calvin Kleins.
that are very small. I always pay him out heaps when he puts them on, don't I?
Kitty's like a fucking sand crab.
Yeah.
Just walking around going, oh, look at those gruds. Look at your penis and those gruds. Fucking get off
They
me.
just look so funny though. I'm like, they're so tight. Yeah. I can't help myself. But anyway, so you decided you'd finally pull the trigger and lock in a photo shoot. And I thought, oh, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do it with him. But I'm not going to have
Never
to do
to be outdone.
Well, I just thought, you know, it'd be good to refocus again and refocus on my...
Oh, yeah.
Listen, look, I'm sick of being a booze hound and a party girl. No, but I just thought it'd be fun to do it with you, and then we get some of those sexy photos together, even though I fucking hate posing. But just to have a focus again with my training and set some performance goals and just have a goal again, it'll be fun. You know, I've gone through the non-goal stage. Yeah. But obviously I'm not going to have to diet as much as you because you're fatter than me. So, you know. Thank fuck, because I hate dieting so much. So anyway, we thought we'd get on and Craig would talk everyone through, you know, the process that we're going to both go through to get there. So the building phase, the holding phase, the dieting phase, you know, how that nutrition will be set up. And then part 2, we'll talk about the training. So,
okay.
Over to you.
So... I've been pretty much gaining since about April last year. So April 22, I come out of the diet and I started reversing. So it's been, what are we in, end of May now? So it's been over a year of just gain. I've only kind of I haven't done a hard mini cut during that time because I've been pretty...
What's a mini cut for the listeners out there that may not know what a mini cut is?
A mini cut is an aggressive period of dieting where you bring your calories down super low, but you...
When you say super low, like what percentage of your maintenance calories?
So about 33%.
Okay, so and also too, just side note, this is... You would only recommend this for experienced like lifters and people who are very consistent and have been going through a building phase. If you're a woman who's been dieting, you wouldn't be doing this.
No. And in all honesty, the whole point of a mini cut is actually to prolong your muscle building phase. Mm-hmm. So obviously when you go through a muscle building phase, you need to be in a caloric surplus and slowly seeing your weight go up.
And how much?
Generally for females, about 1% of their body weight per month.
Okay, so it's not a lot.
It's not a lot, you know, and it does depend on the person. That's not a hard rule. It's just kind of like, this is generally what works pretty well for most people, given that women can only gain so much strength, you know, on a week-to-week basis. Guys, you can be a little bit more aggressive because they can handle mass and they can push heavier weights, obviously, but 1% per month is generally pretty good, and that's obviously where you look at measurements and you look at photos to kind of determine, can we push it a little bit harder or do we actually need to dial it back? So, you know, the power of the check-in. And
that's right, because you don't want to gain too much body fat.
No, well, I mean, the whole point about a gaining phase is to put on as much lean muscle as possible, but you need to be in a surplus to do that, and if you're doing it for long enough, you are going to accumulate some body fat.
You have to, right? Like, that's normal. Yeah, but you don't, it's not like some people like the dirty bulk where they just... get fat as and then because you have to get it off.
Yeah, whatever goes on has to come off. right? And it's sort of like, well, if we do it at a reasonable pace, and obviously, this is where tracking your food and doing weekly check-ins and doing your measurements and tracking your body weight and looking at photos, looking at your relative strength gains, that's going to determine, what happens month after month. Do we push it a little bit harder or do we pull it back? But you can continue to do that for an extended period of time. Now, coming back to your question about the mini cut, because I know you can see that look in your face where you want to jump in. You're like, I'm not really listening to you. I'm just
I am listening. I'm just trying to think about the questions that people would ask.
So the mini cut is once you get to a certain point and for a female, if we're going through this, say like one of my clients, she's about 16% on 16% body fat on average year round. When we're going through this phase, once they get up to about 22%, so it's about a 6% body fat gain, that's generally where it will be a rough cutoff where I'll go, okay, we've gained as much as we can. You've kind of accumulated as much body fat as we're probably prepared to go. Now that's where we use a mini cut to do a 4 to 6 week aggressive dieting phase to basically just wash off some of that accumulative body fat to then bring you back down and then allow you hopefully to give you another 3 to 6 months of gaining again. So the point of a mini cut is to essentially extend a mass gaining phase. It's not to be used as a conventional diet, because a conventional diet is about not going that hard with the calories, maybe going at about 20 to 25% at the most over that time, and you do it gradually over a 16 to 20 week period. Mini cuts are only 4 to 6 weeks, really, really aggressive, and then you pull it back out.
So the initial phase for us will be a building phase. Mm-hmm. So in a building phase, you talked about eating in a calorie surplus. How much of a surplus above your maintenance calories typically?
So that's going to be very individualistic. It depends on, you need to have a good baseline of,
so you need to know
what your maintenance calories are, and then how the person responds to training, what their consistency is like.
Would you say then, if you don't have that data, because what you're doing with me, because I've not been consistent for the last 12 weeks, is we've set my calories, we've set my training, and you're going to test it for 2 weeks.
Correct.
And you're going to see what happens.
Yeah.
So basically, we've set my calories at 2,900. Mm-hmm. I'm still doing the same program structure. So I'm doing a 3-day program, full body, upper body, lower body. Yeah. And I'm just doing that because it works for me and it fits in my schedule. So I'm not saying that that's the best split, because, people listen to the podcast say, oh, but Kitty said this. I'm like, that's not what I'm saying.
This is the best.
Craig's actually training 5 days.
Yeah.
He likes to train 5 days.
Yeah.
So we're setting the calories. I think my protein's about 170. What I'm actually doing is I hit the protein and then I let the carbs and fat be in a range. Yep. So as long as I hit the calories, and I think in a building phase you can be a bit more flexible with this, I think.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So I'll make sure I hit the protein. And then the fat will usually range from, say, 55 grams to maybe 70, max 75. And then the carbs will fill up the rest.
Yes.
Ensuring that I hit the calories. And so what are your calories set at?
So mine on a training day are at 3750. And on my non-training day, they're at 2950.
So what do you think then? What's the benefits versus, because I like to just eat the same calories every day. Sometimes I've done it in the past where I do lower high. I'm like, it's just a fuck around for me. Yeah. It's annoying, and it's easy to just eat the same thing. So do you think it's just personal preference?
Yeah, I think on my training days, I still hit my 12,000 steps per day, but I'm just not that as active. And for me at the moment, 3750 calories, that's a lot of food. And I just like it because I'm I just don't need to eat as much that day, and it's just I just find it a little easier. Yeah. But the way I set up my food is all I do is just pull my rice pudding and my condensed milk out.
So you eat pretty much the same thing.
It's still the same structure. It's just a little bit less of those meals where I would have them as a pre and post workout.
Yep.
So it's really easy. My food is identical, so it's really easy to kind of make that adjustment, and that's just something that works for me. Do you need to do that? Absolutely not. All of our best clients that have had the best transformations, none of them do high-low days.
But I think, again, it's about finding what works for you and fits, and then being consistent with it.
Yeah. Yeah, because at the end of the day, the way I do it, it still works out to an average calories, which I can't remember off the top of my head, I think it's about 34 or something like that, as weekly calories. So it's just on the days that I'm training, because some of my sessions, take quite a while, I just want to eat more food on those, so I feel more recovered. But on the days that I'm not training, I'm not expending as much, so don't feel like I need to eat as much. So it's just something that works for me. Is one better than the other? Absolutely not. I mean, there has been arguments about when you're in a deficit, having more carbs on those training days is going to obviously help you fuel, but also help your recovery process. But that is here or there. I really don't think it makes really that much difference, because I've prepped people to get super lean doing one way, and I've prepped people to get super lean.
So it's just more about what works for you.
Absolutely. Whatever the client prefers. Some people are just like, no, I just don't want to think about that. I want to eat the same thing. Yep, fine. No problems. Yep.
Okay, cool. So we're basically going to test. So I've obviously got to be consistent with it, which I am being. It's 2 days in to be consistent so far. Well done, Kitty. Yep. And then weigh every day. Yeah. Why do you weigh every day and then average the weight at the end of the week?
Well, so we can take into account the fluctuations that happen on a daily basis. So, things like hydration, stress, poor sleep,
training, cycle,
menstrual cycle. There are a number of reasons why your weight will fluctuate. None of them have anything to do with fat gain. They're just daily fluctuations because they're daily fluctuations. But in order to understand what's actually truly happening, we want to weigh ourselves every single morning. First thing when we wake up, after we've been to the bathroom, but before we eat or drink anything, weigh ourselves, do that every day for 7 days. And on the 7th day, when you do your check-in, work out your average weight, right? And then that's going to give you a week 1 body weight average. And then you're going to repeat that same process again for week 2. And then you can compare the trend. Did your weight go up, go down, or stay the same after week 2? And you can then kind of, basically, I just have a calculation that I work out what the average rate of gain or loss is. And then depending on what phase you're in, will determine what kind of
So we'll look at my weight.
Happens.
And it's doing it in a 2-week period, and then you'll make an adjustment to the calories.
Yes.
And then so how long... So the photo shoot's on the 24th, I think, of October or somewhere around there. So how many weeks are we doing the building phase? Probably I'll do it longer than you, hey?
Yeah, so you can, because you don't have as much to lose.
That's right. I'm not a fatty like you. I'm just stirring him up, everyone. Everyone's like, I can't believe Kitty.
No, I mean,
you're not a fatty. I'm just joking.
No,
I'm joking.
I've been,
but you do have more body fat to lose than me.
Absolutely. I've been gaining for over 12 months now. So I've definitely accumulated more than I'd like to, but it's at a point now where at my level of advancement where I have to just forego the fact that don't look as good with a shirt off at this stage. Definitely looking very soft. Keeping the old guts tucked in, the old
terrible guts. So he lets it all hang out.
But I'm also at my
strongest,
highest strength levels around a lot of the big lifts. So it's all a means to end. We have to look at the gaining phase as a time where you're not going to look your best, but you're going to make the most progress from a muscle gain perspective. And then the goal is once we finish this gain phase, we basically strip it all off and see what we've built.
Do you think potentially as well, because we work with a lot of different women. Yeah. Majority of women we work with have got fat to lose and they're under-muscled.
Yes.
It's less women that we work with that are like I am now. But I think one thing that stops potentially women who are smaller from getting the physique that they want is eating in this surplus and getting stronger for a longer period of time because they spend too much time dieting.
Well, I would say the vast majority of our people don't need to do that. They can eat at maintenance and we basically go through a recomp phase because their strength, even though they might have a lot of fat to lose, the vast majority of women are massively under-muscled more than they're over-fat. And what we see happen is because once they actually start training properly, like they learn how to execute and start training with Evan, have a structured program where they're working towards strength milestones, the muscle happens very, very quickly. Well, by quickly, I mean it's going to happen the quickest at that time more than it's ever going to in the future. So we want to capitalize on the fact that you don't need to be eating in a surplus and gaining any more and simply just gaining muscle by way of your training performance is massively increasing week to week and just trying to set your calories at a range to just sort of maintain your body weight. That's where we're going to see those measurements come down. And we want to kind of set it up where you hit some training milestones that, okay, once you hit these, then we can go into a specific fat loss phase because then the goal is just to maintain your training at that point. And you're not trying to gain anymore because you'll get to a point where in order for you to start gaining, you then start to actually be eating more food into a surplus. And if they've still got quite a bit of body fat to lose or they want to really be dropping down, 10 kilos or something more in body weight, then that's where like a proper focus on fat loss, an expedited fat loss phase makes sense. But that's only going to work efficiently if they've got the muscle built underneath.
And that's, I think, like all of them, like I spoke to a lady today and she's in her 50s. I'm like, you're just under-muscled. You need to learn how to train properly and then eat enough to actually build some muscle so that then when you diet, you'll be eating high calories.
Yeah. But by eat enough, they don't need to be in a surplus.
No. But you know, like...
So there's...
But I'm saying, like, get out of the habit of...
Maintenance calories is a range.
Yes.
Right? So we want to find the top end range of maintenance for them relative to their output and their strength level continuing to increase. They might allow... That range might increase a little bit more over time as they get stronger, but it should be not at a point where the weight starts to go up.
No, what I was saying before you really cut me off.
Oh,
which
you know
is
how it feels, Jeez. Now.
Is that the women that we work with, typically they undereat and restrict and then they binge.
Yes, correct.
So it's trying to get them to eat more on a daily, consistent basis and get them out of the habit of that binge restrict, and eating enough to fuel their training and focusing on that body recomposition instead of going, fuck, I just need to get to this number on the scales.
Yes.
Because it just bites me in the ass every time. It's like you don't have enough muscle. You haven't spent enough time actually like reviving your bloody metabolism because you've spent years fucking yourself.
Yeah.
Literally.
You just need to eat some food and start lifting some weights and build some muscle.
And it can be frustrating because it's slow, you know, like it's a slow, but we see it all the time with the women that just do that. They just come out better at the end. You know, they've got a better physique. They can eat more food because, you know, like, you know, we've talked about this before. Obviously, having more muscle means that you do burn more calories at rest, but it's not exponentially a huge amount.
No.
But and this is from us working with clients and our own experience, it's the recovery process from the hard strength training that's really energy intensive.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's just like that the calorie expenditure during a workout is very minimal. I mean, you might...
But even adding more muscle, like if you added 5 kilos of muscle, how many more calories would you burn at rest?
Oh, I can't remember that off the top of my head. I think
isn't it like 30 calories per pound or something?
Yeah,
it's not a lot.
Much. It's not much.
It's not a lot.
Yeah.
But I think it's the recovery. Like you train hard and then your body is trying to recover the next day. Like that's what...
Yeah, you don't recover for free. No, absolutely not.
That's right. Like that's where I feel, because I notice it as soon as I start training hard and pushing, like training well and executing the movements well and pushing them to failure. Yeah. My body's just like, fucking give me the food. Yeah. I'm hungry. Yeah. You know, and I can eat more. Yeah.
Yes. But that's why it's so important to...
And activity levels too.
Yeah, but that's why it's so important to track your food and
track your numbers.
Do your check-in every week and track your body weight and do your measurements, because... It's like, don't take our word for it. If you actually measure those things, it becomes very obvious how much food you need to, or maybe a little bit less food, or what you need to change. Like all of those things are very measurable, and what you can measure, you can manipulate. Yeah,
and the good thing too is, like we've just talked about at the start of the podcast, if you don't want to track forever, you don't have to.
No.
Like get to your goal, build that body. Like I'm a perfect example of that, you know, taking the piss for the last 12 weeks, not really taking the piss, but like just not being very consistent, still eating and, you know, eating all the foods I normally would, and you know I've done this for long enough to know how much to eat, but I ate out a lot, I drank more alcohol than usual, I didn't track my steps, I just went for a walk, but I didn't try and get a certain number of steps, and I was able to maintain what I had. So if you put the work in and you learn how to track and you learn all these habits or put these habits in place, you don't have to do it forever. Anyway, all right, back to the building phase. So how long?
So I've got about another, I have to look at my schedule, I think it's about another 9 weeks.
So how long would I do you think?
Well, you could probably go, you in reality probably only need about 8 weeks.
Of dieting?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I could do how many, so 12, 13, 14 weeks of this building phase?
Yeah. Yeah, if that's what it works out to,
Yeah.
And what I'll be doing is, like, at the end of my 9 weeks, I want my body weight to be as high as possible, you know, relatively, but I'm still tracking everything. But I want it to kind of end at the highest point, and then I'm basically going to hold it for 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. So, like, I'm actively pushing my strength as much as I can, like really pushing everything really, really hard. And then once I get to that, I want to hold that body weight and that composition and those lifts that I've been doing, so they become the new set point. This is my new body weight set point. This is my new strength milestone set point. And then at that point, once it becomes homeostasis, it's like, this is just what we are. That's when the fat loss phase starts. And then I can make a decent drop in calories and start to see the fat come off while still being able to maintain those strength milestones that I've there. So if I can get them up to that point by the end of that 9 weeks, and then hold them, then I know that they'll be pretty solid. They'll be locked in. And then, because the whole goal about a fat loss phase is, apart from losing as much fat as possible, it's also retaining as much muscle as possible. And the only reason you're going to maintain that muscle is if you've got these strength milestones that you've set. And then the goal is, I'm not trying to beat them during that point, because I'm in an energy deficit. It requires more to recover from that. So I just go, like, if I'm hitting, what's my stiff leg at? Like 190 for 7 or something like that. So every week during that fat loss phase, I've just got to go in and hit 190 for 7.
Yep.
2, 190 for 7. Week 3, 190 for 7. Week 1. As the diet progresses, that will drop off a little bit. It'll go 190 for 6, and then it'll go 190 for 5, and then probably I'll drop it back to 185, and I'll get 8. And so especially when you've got, like, I'll probably lose, I don't know, maybe. Well, it's hard to know because I've been gaining for so long. It might be like between 6 and 8 kilos, something like that, to get lean. So obviously, I'm just going to be at a smaller body weight. I'm going to have less glycogen in my muscles. Yep. So my ability to lift some of those bigger loads it's just not going to happen. They are going to drop off.
Yep.
But the point is that if I've exceeded everything that I've done from the previous fat loss phase, where I was only maintaining like 160 kilos stiff leg for like 9 reps or something like that. If I'm maintaining around 25 to 30 kilos more on that particular lift, then hopefully I'll get leaner, but also be an extra 3 or 4 kilos heavier.
Yep.
So therefore, that will be the muscle that I've gained.
So when you move into, so let's say we do this building phase and we go, okay, it's actually, I just want to talk about some different ways that we approach our nutrition, like versus the building phase versus the fat loss phase. So like you eat it probably nearly the same thing every day. What I like to do is I will have a bit of a think about what I want to eat for the week in terms of the dinners and the lunches. I'll usually like prep a lunch. So I've made a prawn laksa for this week, and then in the other days I've had like
She loves a good laksa.
Oh, I fucking love laksa, eh? That's the best.
Do we need to be talking about this in this podcast, or can it wait? Didn't you say that?
The laksa?
No, the nutrition. We're going to talk about that in part 2.
No, the nutrition's now. We're talking about nutrition now. The training's part 2. We've been talking about nutrition for the last 30 minutes. Fuck.
It's a well-oiled machine here.
We're going to talk specifically about the training in the next episode. So, what I like to do, because I think obviously too, you can have a little bit more flexibility in the building, not loads and not actually track, but you can, like I said, hit the protein. You can change, I guess, put the carbs and fat up or down depending on what you enjoy, and then just hit the calories. But basically what I do is I have a think about what I'm going to have for the week. So like I've got 2 dinners or 3 dinners planned out, a couple of lunches. I have the same breakfast every day. So the night before, what I do is I go in and I finalise the next day.
Yep.
So I think what that does is just makes it much easier, during the day when I'm working and when I'm busy, just to know what I'm eating, and I just do that day to day. However, when we get into a fat loss phase, when it's important that you're accurate because you're trying to eat in a calorie deficit to lose body fat.
Yes.
So what I do in a deficit is I just eat the same thing for the week. I'll just do one day, I'll eat the same breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then if we go out, and I'll obviously try and track it much more accurately and choose something that's easy to track like a steak. But I'll eat every other meal the same, because what I think that does is, takes out the decision fatigue. You're a bit tired, you're a bit hungry, you'll be hungry because you're in a deficit, and it takes out that room for error.
Yep.
Because when you're tracking on the fly and you're putting things in, even if you think you're tracking accurately, you'll be making mistakes.
No.
Like, it's just easier.
I'm yet to see, in almost my decade of doing this, anyone who can, especially in a fat loss phase, that can track on the fly and still be losing at the rate that is what I would deem successful fat loss on a week-to-week basis. It just doesn't fucking happen. People believe they go, I'm doing everything, I'm hitting my numbers, and I'm like, is your measurements going down? No, it's not. I'm like, you are fucking it up. But I'm hitting my numbers. I'm like, I'm telling you. You are
fucking it up. And the other thing too is alcohol. Like, I'm like, if you're trying to lose, and look, I've done it. I've drunk alcohol in deficit, and it's hard because you have to account for the calories. So you have to take. Can you drink and lose body fat? Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, you can. Sure. Obviously, it's calories.
Deficit. Yep.
But it makes it a fuck ton harder. You're hungry on the day because you're cutting out calories. You have a shit sleep.
Yep.
Then you're hungry the next day because you've had a shit sleep.
Yep.
So it just makes it so much harder.
And then your training is affected by that. So if you're then not able to hit the numbers to maintain the muscle you got, you're more likely to lose some more muscle, because when you're in an energy deficit, you're more prone to muscle loss because of the catabolic effect, nature of being in a deficit. So why would you do anything further? Because it's so easy to lose muscle when you're in a deficit. Why would you do anything to fucking disrupt that? Like for me personally, I'm like, well, I've spent 13 months eating a lot of food and not looking as great, and managed to maneuver my way through the summertime wearing some shirts and loose fitting clothes and different things like that. But it's like I put all this time in because I really wanted to make some big leaps in terms of my strength performances, so that muscle gain could be shown. And it's just like, to me, I'm just like, it would just be the dumbest thing to do. And now I'm not saying you can never drink, but what I'm saying is
you'll just make better progress if you don't.
You'll make better progress, and if it's important to you, just don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't fucking do it. You don't need to do it. Like, no one gives a shit whether you drink or not. The only people who fucking give a shit about that are your fucking useless friends who are out of shape and want to fucking drink and do stupid shit like that all the time anyway. And who gives a fuck about that?
But you have to ask yourself, like, why are you doing it? Like, why do you have to do it?
Yeah.
You have to have that honest conversation. And I think, so often with clients when we talk to them, they'll say, oh, but, I had to eat out, 5 times a week. I'm like, no, you didn't. And the reason you're not making progress, but I made good choices, but it doesn't matter. Because it's so hard to track accurately, especially when you go to restaurants. They use so much fat. So I'm not saying don't ever go out, but maybe, if you know that you have to go out, like you're going out once a week, be really good for the rest of the week. Track everything, plan in advance, eat the same shit every day. So then when you go out, it's one meal and it's not going to make a difference.
That's right.
But when you're going, I skipped breakfast today, and then I'm tracking on the fly, and then I'm going out for dinner every night. It's like, of course you're not going to get the results that you want. And knuckle down and do the work and get there, and then the maintenance is easier because people go, I want balance, but it's like it's the unbalancedness, which is not a word, that got you to this place. So you have to dial it in.
Yes.
You have, but it just becomes so much easier when you get there. All right, so fat loss phase. All right.
There is no such thing as balance, by the way. People are like, I want to have this balance. Balance means you make no progress.
Yeah, I just think it's like you got to stop. You say,
fuck balance. Be great. Do you understand? If you're in a fat loss phase, be dedicated to the fat loss phase, because the reason you went to the fucking fat loss phase in the beginning was because you wanted a specific outcome.
But you won't regret it. You won't regret it.
Have a great outcome and have balance. It does not fucking work. Fuck.
And it just prolongs it. It just prolongs it too.
Yes.
Like you could get in and out in a fat loss phase in 12 weeks and get amazing results and go, fuck yeah. And then, you can have a little bit more room to move, and you can go out on the weekend, have a meal off the plan. It's not going to matter. But it's like, do the work.
Yeah.
Knuckle down, say no.
If you don't want to do that, don't fucking enter into a fat loss phase. Like if you're like, look, I've got to do all these sort of things. I'm like, cool, that's fine. I'm not judging that. Like you do whatever you want. But it's just like when you want to enter this and you're like, yeah, but I still want to have this great physique and lose this body fat, but I still want to do all the things that are not conducive at all to developing that physique or seeing that particular fat loss actually happen. Just stop it. Just don't do it. It's not going to fucking ruin your life for the next 12 weeks if you don't fucking go out and have a drink.
But go out and just don't drink. Just choose not to drink. Just drink. You have to practice doing it.
I've been doing it for years, and I still get all the questions from people. Your sister mainly, she's like, I just don't know how you manage to go out with all these people around you drinking and you just never drink. And I'm like, well, I just don't drink. It's not that fucking hard. You just don't do it. Like it just baffles me the amount of conversations I've had like that over the years where people are just
they can't understand.
They're just like, how do you do it? And I'm like, what do you mean? I choose that drink instead of that one. It's not fucking complicated.
Yeah. Anyway, so the fat loss, all right. So when we hit the fat loss...
I haven't had a rant on these for a while, actually.
I think, though, it's just, you got to ask yourself, am I happy how I am?
You're not fucking happy.
Is this decision going to get me closer or further away to my...
Draw the line in the sand. Get on with it, people.
But it really is just, I think, every day, every week, making those micro decisions that just basically reinforce the new identity, I want to be that woman who is strong and capable and athletic and sleeps well and has great cycles. And it's like... Is choosing that alcohol right now? I'm not saying you can never drink again, because I still drink. Yeah. But is this in line with, is this decision moving me closer and reinforcing this new identity? And and every time you make that decision, it gets a bit easier. you know, and yeah, it is fucking hard at the start. We're like, I used to be the biggest pisshead ever and trying to change, but it just, when I go back and do it, because I fall sometimes, like I said, the last 12 weeks, and then I'm like, fuck, I don't want to be like this anymore. Like I don't, and it's not even about how I look, it's about how I feel. So, all right, so when we hit the fat loss phase.
Just on that, like I obviously I've been, you know, we've had events and stuff, and like I've been having like 1 or maybe 2 meals off the plan. But during my muscle gain phase, I've got more wiggle room to just, if I eat a little bit more on a whatnot or whatever, it's not going to matter because, like, you know, the whole goal is slowly about pushing my weight up. And if again, it's just not a big deal, right? But when I'm in a fat loss phase, and especially like for a photo shoot specific to look really lean, it's like I won't do it at all. I just won't.
No.
Will my life end if I don't go out for 3 or 4 months because I'm trying to fucking no one cares.
But I still think though, Craig, like you can do it, but you have to be very. I'm not saying that you're going to do. I'm not.
No one can do it successfully.
Yes, they can.
I don't
I've
give a
done
flying
it.
fuck what you say.
Yes.
No one can do it.
You can do it.
See it
I agree with cutting out the booze, but I think if you plan, like one strategy that I used previously, because I knew we had a lot of things on it, was in a fat loss phase. I took 100 calories from every day, so I ate 100 calories less. And I put them on a Saturday, and then I could have a meal off the plan, and I had that more flex room. I didn't need to worry, and it worked. I dropped body fat, but I was like legit 100% consistent the rest of the week. Every fucking meal I ate the same thing. So if you know that you're doing that, have some strategy in place. Don't drink alcohol, and you know.
But you're also a black belt when it comes to understanding food.
Yeah,
and
but what I'm saying is that you
like
can do it if you do the right things. Yeah.
You can.
Yeah. If you be smart.
But I also know if for me to get to the result that I want, if I just don't do it, the result will always be better.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
So that's what I'm saying. Like if you want to have a really legit result, you just don't do it.
Look, but you can. Look, if you just be smart about it. No. Listen. Okay, so when we hit the dieting phase, because this will be over like, let's just say 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Right? So how much deficit, what percentage of your maintenance calories would you start at?
For me?
Yeah.
I usually like to go hard the first 2 weeks. So I'll actually probably do something like a 25 to 30% drop.
Oh, so an aggressive deficit to start with. Why?
Yeah. Because it will, based off that percentage, I can see how much I drop and then I can recalculate to bring it back in because I want to be losing about 0.75 to 1% of body weight per week. So if I start aggressive, I can really see what changes. Like I think sometimes people go a bit too concerned. They're just like, oh, I'm just going to start in a 10% whatever.
But do you think though for someone like say me, like you wouldn't do that strategy with me?
Well, it doesn't matter. Like you can start at 10% if you like.
10 to 15%. Like would you start?
Yeah, I think 15% is fine.
Is it good?
Yeah. Because if you start too small, you won't see
a difference. Yeah. So would you say then 15% is a good starting point?
Yeah, 15. Yeah.
Because, you know, like I'm less fat than you, and as I've pointed out many times.
I'm so offended, by the way.
And also,
so offended.
I've got less body fat to lose, and I don't respond well to aggressive calorie deficits.
Yeah. No shit. Thanks for that, Captain Fucking Obvious.
But I think,
so... You hear a crap on, sausage. I don't like dieting. Why am I dieting? Why do this? I don't want to do this anymore.
Listen, fatty. We're all not fat like you, all right? So... Anyway, but with clients, when you're typically working with clients and women that we work with, would you start them at 15%?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. And then...
But it would also depend on the person. Like if they're my client, I've been working with them for a long time, I also understand how they respond.
Yeah.
Because I've got fucking so much data behind them and there's been so many conversations and understanding like, you know, like it's that it might be a little bit more aggressive than that if there's a timeline in place.
And if they're in a good position too, like if they're health-wise, their health markers are good.
Yeah.
Because you'd never do something like this with someone who's under-muscled, shit sleep, loads of stress. Like it's just not a good strategy, you know. Right. Like it's. Exactly. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Totally. Yep.
So, but we're both healthy.
Yeah.
Well, now that I'm not sick anymore, I'm healthy, feeling really good. Started training again. And so for me, how much would you want me to be losing per week?
Well, see, that's the thing. You just don't have that much to lose. So it's, you know. I'm just going to look at pictures pretty much for you. Like I'll look at body weight and sort of see that trend. So like probably if you're losing like, 0.5% of body weight per week, I think that would be fine for you. and then whatever that works out into centimeters lost, it might be, 2 or 3 centimeters or something like that in girth measurements. It won't be a lot. But it really will sort of determine what needs to happen if we need to make it more aggressive or less aggressive after those first 2 weeks. So the first 2 weeks, regardless, if you're in a gaining phase, you're in a mini cut, you're in, a holding phase, you're in a maintenance phase, you're in a fat loss phase. The first 2 weeks is always going to determine what the next steps are for the rest of the phase. So, if we start at 15, we'll run it for 2 weeks, see what the outcome is. If we need to be more aggressive, we can be more. If we don't need to, we don't need to.
2 more things I want to touch on before we wrap it up and move on to the training is another thing. Another place where I see women potentially go wrong when they're dieting is I think when we're in this surplus phase, in the building phase, you can have more, I wouldn't say fun foods, but food, because you're in a calorie surplus.
Yes.
So, for example, I had this afternoon an Anzac biscuit and a big cup of milk, 400 mils of milk with 10 grams of casein. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have that when I was dieting.
No.
Because it's not very filling.
Yes.
Like drinking a lot of liquids isn't very filling. And I think when you're dieting, you reduce calories, you want to really make sure that nearly all of those calories are giving you bang for your buck in terms of nutrients and satiating, so filling. So, for example, when I'm in a surplus, I'd drink more juice versus I'd eat whole oranges. Mm-hmm. I'd have more fun foods. Like when I say fun, it's fun, but it's not the right word. But like fudge, for example. Yeah, because I've hit all my nutrients. I'm getting all my nutrients. So fudge is just sugar. Yep. But if you were dieting and in a deficit, fudge is not a great idea because it's not particularly filling.
Absolutely not. No.
And it's not bad for you, but it's just sugar. It's just energy, really. A bit of calcium in there too. So I think, when you're dieting...
I think, it just... For me, like, when I'm looking at a client's food setup, when they go into a deficit, generally I don't want to be making any big changes to their food because that should have been established for somebody either through a recon phase or through a muscle building phase, what foods work, because especially when you're pushing a lot of food in, digestion can sort of
so liquids are good, I think.
Like that. Yeah. But when you then go into, you're like, okay, I've gained, for me, for example, it's like I've pretty much been eating the same kind of diet for the entire 30 months, years really, but I always make sure it's always a couple of eggs. There's always beef mince. There's always a piece of fish in there. There's always
liver,
the carrots.
oysters,
there's always the mushrooms,
juice,
liver and
oranges.
Dairy. There's just these staple foods that always need to be in my diet because I enjoy them, but they're very nutrient dense and make sure I'm not deficient in anything. So the change of my diet from a muscle building phase to a fat loss phase is just purely reducing the quantities of those foods.
But not everyone's like you, a robot who eats the same thing every day.
Yes,
women don't do that.
That's true. But what the point I'm trying to make, is that you shouldn't be massively overhauling your diet in a fat loss phase.
What I'm saying is like probably women can relate more to me because they're not eating like you, but they might be eating like me. So like this morning for breakfast, having juice instead of whole oranges. So I'll swap that out. I'll have
the same thing.
I'll have less milk and have more yogurt.
Yes.
And things that, like I'd probably take out the fudge and the Anzac biscuits.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And just have more filling foods.
But at the same time, if you're ticking all of those boxes from all of the nutrient perspective, if having a piece of fudge is going to allow you to adhere to the diet,
do it.
Then absolutely do it. And I think that's very person dependent.
Totally.
Some people could go, I absolutely can't live without it. It's like, fine, we'll put it in. If you can, it's just like, let's find a better option. Because there are better options. Because
it's just like, and when you're in a deficit, you're already hungry.
Yes.
So you can be less hungry if you're eating more fruit, potatoes, rice, meat, eggs, things that are more satiating, I think, filling, a bit more fibre. Yeah. Just makes it easier and more tolerable. Yeah. I think.
Yeah.
Okay. And last thing, cardio. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about steps. Yeah. I'm actually going to get our friend Libby on the podcast again next month, I think, and I'm going to get her to just talk about everything cardio. So like zone 1, zone 2, is it zone 3? Is there 4 zones?
4 zones.
4 zones. Yeah. So get her to talk about, because I think where women go wrong, because this is what I used to do, is I used to just flog the fuck out of myself. Long, hard runs. I do what I thought was HIIT, but it's not real HIIT, according to Libby. No. Like you said, true HIIT, you're only going to do it like once a week, right? True, actual proper HIIT.
And it's like 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's not long. Yeah, so I used to smash myself and just do all these classes and boot camps and cardio, which was really beneficial and not helping build muscle. But when you can do it more strategically and in the right zone, so I've been, since we did the last podcast. I've been doing 1 recovery session a week. So zone 2 heart rate, about 145 beats a minute, and it's pretty easy. And I do it on the stepper, and it actually really helps me with my muscle because I like to push my training hard. I don't do any sprints because I can't be fucked. But I do steps, and I do just walk.
Yep.
I'm not actually haven't set myself a step target now because, like yesterday, because I was busy and couldn't go for a walk, I did about 5,000 steps. But today, because I've walked to the bank, I'm just doing what I would do normally, and I'm just going to see what happens. Whereas I know you're setting an actual step target.
Yeah, I always have a step target.
Yeah.
So I'll have it at 12,000 for me. I think, I just do 12,000 because it's beneficial for a number of reasons, and I've got a really good walking route routine. I walk to the gym and different things like that. That it's quite easy for me to hit that on the daily. So I'll probably just keep it at 12,000 the entire time and just let my food, massively sort of dictate it. If there will be a cutoff point where I'm like, if I need to make another drop, I'll use more steps as opposed to the drop. And that's just a thing that makes sense. We only really want to change one variable at a time. So it's just like, just let food do it, keep everything else the same. Then once that sort of hits a point, maybe after you've made a few dietary reductions, then you can then increase that a little bit more. But
probably if you're new to this and you're getting into the habits, like I wouldn't do what I'm doing because I've done steps for like years and years and years, and it just showed on those 12 weeks where I didn't track them and I just walked because I'm generally quite an active person naturally. I don't really need to try and aim to get steps. Yeah, like I just always go.
Fidgets when she sleeps.
I just always take the dogs for a walk, and I get up from my desk quite often. I don't like sitting still for long periods of time. So for me, so I'll just do that, and then when we get maybe to the fat loss phase, I'll actually have a proper step target and hit that every day. And I think that's it. Do you want anything else around the nutrition?
No, I don't think so. I think that's kind of the main things.
All right. Yeah. All right. So, tune in next episode, and we're going to talk about the training. So what the training's going to look like in the training. Daz are back with the training tips. What that's going to look like in the building phase, then the difference, in the fat loss phase, and why we're focusing mainly on strength training, not cardio. Blah blah blah. So tune in for that. So, as always, take a screenshot and share of the episode, and share your biggest takeaways on Instagram stories and tag me at KITTYBLOMFIELD. And each month I pick a winner, and they get a tub of Saturée Premium Collagen valued at $79. And we'll see you next time.